Joel Osteen's journey from behind-the-scenes television producer to the leader of America's largest church is a story of unexpected rise and immense influence, with millions tuning into his message of hope worldwide. However, beneath his polished smile and uplifting sermons lies a deeper tension, as massive wealth, shrinking attendance, and fierce criticism cast shadows over his once unshakable ministry, prompting questions about how a pastor preaching prosperity can face such scrutiny and whether his message of blessing can withstand growing doubts about financial transparency, theological depth, and the church's response to crisis. Osteen's path began in Houston in 1963, where he grew up in a faith-filled family but stayed out of the pulpit, instead honing his skills in media production for Lakewood Church, shaping its broadcast with Hollywood-level polish until his father's sudden death in January 1999 thrust him into leadership at 35, delivering his first sermon just days before John Osteen passed away, leaving Joel to lead a congregation of 6,000 members despite feeling unprepared and lacking formal theological training. Yet, almost immediately, attendance soared to nearly 30,000 weekly over the next 5 years, fueled by Joel's strategic investment in television airtime, billboards, and media outreach, doubling the advertising budget and buying premium time slots to expand his reach, understanding that media power was key to his influence. His preaching style, simple, hopeful, and focused on positive thinking rather than complex doctrine, resonated deeply, offering a gentler, more accessible Christianity that avoided fire and brimstone, which won over millions seeking solace. But this growth soon required more space, leading to the shocking decision to lease Houston's Compaq Center, a former NBA arena, transforming it into a 16,000-seat sanctuary through a nearly $100 million renovation, complete with waterfalls, broadcast studios, and classrooms, marking a fundamental shift in American religious practice when it opened in 2005, filled to capacity, and watched globally. At that moment, Lakewood functioned as more than church, becoming a media empire reaching 10 million viewers across 100 nations, with Joel's charismatic style and high-quality productions creating a method to engage spectators who would never visit a church, blending faith-based content with motivational appeal. Building this media empire was central to Joel's strategy, starting in the early 1980s when he helped launch Lakewood's television ministry from a modest local audience to national and international platforms over 2 decades, producing thousands of sermons to make the church look as polished as any entertainment show. And by the mid-2000s, his broadcast reached 92% of American households, with 10 million tuning in weekly, turning him into one of the most viewed pastors globally. Books played a crucial role, with his 2004 Release Your Best Life now selling over 4 million copies and remaining on the New York Times bestseller list for nearly 4 years, blending faith with self-help to broaden his appeal beyond traditional churchgoers. And he went on to author over 15 titles, with more than half becoming bestsellers, earning him an estimated $13 million in royalties from Become a Better You Alone. His live events flourished into large-scale productions like the Night of Hope Tour, selling out arenas in major cities with ticket prices around $15, drawing over 60,000 attendees to events featuring lighting displays, music, and lively audiences, blending worship with entertainment to create a unique performance style, while social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram gave millions direct access, generating new revenue through sponsorship, advertising, and merchandise sales. Mainstream media appearances on shows like The Oprah Winfrey Show and Larry King Live reached audiences beyond Christian television, establishing Joel as a motivational speaker spreading hope and positivity, which supporters embraced but detractors criticized. And as his message reached the masses, the seeds of tension were quietly sown. At the heart of Joel's teaching is a prosperity gospel, promising that faith and positive confession lead to health, wealth, and happiness, telling followers that God's will is for them to be debt-free, healthy, and abundantly blessed, which has attracted millions seeking encouragement. But unlike traditional Christian preaching focused on sin and repentance, Joel's sermons emphasize self-belief and trusting God's plan, avoiding topics like judgment or hell, which critics say waters down the gospel into a happy life message. Theologians warn that this reduces faith to a transactional formula: believe, speak the right words, and receive material blessings, distorting biblical truth and encouraging self-centeredness, potentially blaming believers for their hardships as a lack of faith. Yet to followers, It offers hope in difficult times, with Joel once stating God's will is for believers to be healthy and debt-free all their lives. Critics like Professor Michael Horton label it cotton candy gospel or even heresy, arguing that skipping repentance leads to moral weakness and superficial faith, while others see it as reflecting cultural desires for optimism and personal ambition, raising questions about whether churches should follow social trends or adhere to core spiritual beliefs. A dilemma that shapes Joel's legacy as his media empire obscures deeper debates about faith, wealth, and ministry. Lakewood Church operates on an estimated annual budget of $90 million, positioning among the wealthiest religious organizations, yet only about 1.3%, roughly $1.2 million, goes to missions and outreach, with the vast majority funneled into weekly services, media production, and elaborate events like the Night of Hope tours. Joel himself has not taken a salary from the church since 2004, with his wealth coming from book royalties, speaking engagements, and merchandise, totaling an estimated $40 to $60 million, living in a $10.5 million Houston mansion, and owning a second home worth around $3 million. Details that clash with expectations of pastoral humility and fuel skepticism about money and ministry. Critics argue that spending patterns reveal a focus on brand building over charity, with glossy productions consuming resources at the expense of deeper ministry work. And by 2017, Lakewood would spend about $25 million annually on television broadcasts alone, money that could support countless charitable initiatives. Yet the relentless expansion generates revenue and visibility, feeding a cycle where growth begets more growth. Expenses for security, administrative staff, and the church's vast operations create substantial financial burdens. But limited transparency in religious organizations deepens doubts, as donors want their contributions to help those in need rather than support megachurch ministries and celebrity pastors, forcing Lakewood to balance expenses with effective outreach that meets moral obligations. Public controversies have further cast shadows, most explosively during the COVID-19 pandemic, when Lakewood accepted a $4.4 million loan from the Federal Paycheck Protection Program, intended for struggling small businesses, sparking outrage given the church's $90 million budget and Joel's tens of millions in wealth. And though the loan was eventually returned, it ignited national debates about wealthy religious institutions tapping emergency funds. Charitable spending faced scrutiny, with just over 1% of the budget going to missions, reinforcing narratives of a media empire over a ministry focused on vulnerable populations. And after Hurricane Harvey devastated Houston in 2017, Lakewood initially kept its 16,000-seat sanctuary closed, citing flooding, but locals noted dry roads and protested, with hashtags like #OpenLakewoodChurch, pushing celebrities to join the backlash until the church opened days later, though the damage to its reputation lingered. During Hurricane Beryl in 2025, Lakewood distributed tens of thousands of water bottles and food boxes, but Joel's initial public response was to ask his 6 million Twitter followers to pray, drawing criticism that an actual physical response should take place, with social media demanding immediate action over thoughts and prayers. After a 2024 shooting where a woman with rifles entered the church, injuring several, including a 7-year-old boy named Samuel shot in the head, security failures became evident, as the shooter bypassed protocols despite the presence of security and off-duty police, leading to investigations and debates on gun control, mental health, and organizational responsibility, with Joel's call for faith and prayer comforting some, but leaving others demanding systemic change. Family and leadership legacy are central to Lakewood's identity, with Joel's wife Victoria, whom he met during a simple errand, becoming a powerful figure, launching the women's ministry in 2003, which grew into a thriving program reaching thousands, while her best-selling book Love Your Life sold 750,000 copies, debuting at number 2 on the New York Times list. Her story from retail work to national ministry, highlighting the blend of boldness and compassion shaping Lakewood. Their partnership forms the backbone of a religious dynasty extending to their children, Jonathan and Alexandra, raised under the spotlight, with Jonathan born in 1995 studying radio, television, and film, leading worship and producing music for young adults, debuting a sermon on Father's Day in 2019 symbolizing generational leadership, while Alexandra, born in 1998, became lead vocalist of Lakewood's worship band LY, her songs reaching hundreds of thousands on Spotify, blending contemporary, music with the church's message, together cultivating legacy within a family ministry model. This approach brings advantages like cohesion and stability, but raises concerns about dynastic leadership and power concentration, with critics viewing it as an insular dynasty focused on preserving influence, while Joel's polished, memorized sermon style, time for television, contrasts with his father John's deep theological study, challenging traditional pastors who fear entertainment replacing essential ministry elements. Security failures and community impact came to a head with a tragic February 2024 shooting, where a woman armed with rifles walked past unarmed security and off-duty officers, opening fire in a crowded hallway, injuring a 47-year-old man and 7-year-old Samuel, shattering the community's sense of safety. Security video showed how easily the shooter bypassed protocols, a failure shocking given Lakewood's resources, as the woman had a history of mental illness and prior charges, but legally purchased weapons in Texas without red flag laws, and investigations revealed anti-Semitic writings and conspiracy theories in her possession, prompting questions about how such a threat remained invisible. The aftermath focused on systemic failures, with community members calling for robust protections, mental health interventions, and legislative changes. Yet Joel's response centered on faith and encouragement to not shrink back, a message many felt sidestepped deeper societal issues. Victims and families struggle with grief, especially Samuel's grandmother, a rabbi, who became an outspoken advocate for gun control and mental health awareness, joined by faith leaders demanding change, her voice symbolizing a community grappling with faith's limits against real-world violence. The shooting created internal uncertainty about safeguarding 45,000 weekly visitors, with operational and financial demands highlighting how past focus on media may have diverted resources from physical security, and previous incidents like a 2014 usher forcibly removing a baby's car seat, injuring a family, showed organizational failures, raising questions about whether vast resources ensure proper care. Lakewood now faces challenges from a changing culture, with younger generations turning away from traditional church. Only 16% of millennials and 15% of Gen Z attend regularly, highlighting a gap between what institutions offer and what younger people seek, as they crave purpose and authenticity, but are skeptical of flashy productions and prosperity messages disconnected from real-world struggles. They want faith communities engaging social issues, fostering meaningful relationships, and embracing digital culture genuinely, with digital faith movements and small groups focused on activism and social justice emerging as alternatives, emphasizing connection and service over individual success. Joel's simple optimism, once revolutionary, risks coming across as superficial to a generation desiring depth, with a cotton candy gospel failing to address nuanced spiritual and social needs, threatening to drive new generations away, while Lakewood's older, aging membership struggles to maintain its extensive facilities and costs, and if it fails to adapt, it risks losing congregants, influence, and community impact. Efforts to bridge generational gaps face difficulties, as Lakewood's online presence relies on standard television methods, but young people prefer interactive environments to share doubts and develop projects, requiring theological shifts toward embracing complexity over simplified prosperity teachings, as cultural changes transform American Christian practice. Joel Osteen's journey from reluctant preacher to megachurch leader is marked by impressive growth, media success, and a message inspiring millions. Yet financial scrutiny, public controversies, leadership dynamics, security lapses, and cultural shifts reveal serious cracks beneath the surface, and navigating these tensions will define not only his legacy, but the future of Lakewood Church itself. And if you found this exploration insightful, please like and subscribe for more in-depth stories, as your support helps bring clarity to complex topics shaping today's world.